Collier's push to reshape women's basketball may be bold, but it's also dangerously misguided. While the WNBA experiences a surge in relevance and attendance thanks to breakout stars like Caitlin Clark, unrivaled, the investor-backed startup Collier co-founded is bleeding money and clinging to relevance through PR buzz. Yet Collier is actively advocating that the WNBA mirror this model: small venues, investor cash, and minimal infrastructure.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
It's a financial fantasy with real-world consequences. Her stance doesn't just reflect a difference in vision. It exposes a fundamental misunderstanding of what it takes to run a sustainable league. And by using her union leadership platform to legitimize this model, she's creating friction where unity is most needed. If Collier's approach wins influence, the WNBA risks being steered toward instability at the worst possible time. The conflict of interest isn't theoretical. It's already distorting labor negotiations and draining trust from a process that affects every player's career. As league leadership and investors navigate an already tense CBA environment, Collier's presence threatens to derail entirely. With her loyalties split between unrivaled success and the WNBA's future, the league stands at a crossroads, and it's Collier's foot on both brakes. Napheesa Collier isn't just a top-tier player in the WNBA. She's also the vice president of the WNBPA, the Players' Union, which means she's not just playing in the league, she's helping shape its future. But that future's looking shaky because Collier has been playing both sides. On one hand, she's supposed to represent the collective interests of the players during one of the most critical labor negotiations in league history. On the other, she's co-founding a competing league that directly undermines the WNBA's stability. It's called Unrivaled. And while the name screams confidence, the business model behind it screams financial chaos. The league is backed mostly by investor capital, bleeding money, and operating at a scale that barely scratches the surface of what the WNBA has built. But here's the real kicker. Collier has publicly criticized the WNBA's financial structure while promoting her startup. So she's standing in a room negotiating for one league, while actively pitching investors and fans on another. This isn't just a business side hustle. It's a full-blown conflict of interest. As a union leader, Collier has a legal and ethical responsibility to prioritize the players' best interests. But when your paycheck and reputation are also tied to the success of a rival product, it's hard to claim you're neutral. And it's not like this is happening quietly. Her co-founder and unrivaled is Breanna Stewart, also a star player and part of the union's negotiation committee. That means two of the loudest voices in shaping the next CBA are also betting on the WNBA failing to meet player needs. So their startup looks like the solution. The damage goes beyond perception. Collier's public criticism of the WNBA's economic viability chips away at the league's credibility with potential sponsors and partners. When one of the league's top players is out here saying the WNBA can't deliver, that sticks. Especially when she's offering an alternative product in the next breath. The timing couldn't be worse. The current CBA is set to expire soon, and the stakes for securing a fair deal are higher than ever. Breanna Stewart has tried to downplay the tension, but it doesn't erase the reality that both she and Collier have a vested interest in showing the WNBA as broken. That sends mixed signals to players, fans, and investors. Are they fighting for the league's future, or burning it down to make way for their own empire? And it's not just optics. There's a real risk here of sabotaging the league's ability to negotiate in good faith. When the people leading the charge have one foot out the door and a business plan in hand, it erodes the foundation of trust needed to bring players, ownership, and leadership to the table. You can't serve two masters, especially not in professional sports labor negotiations. What makes this all the more explosive is the rise of Caitlin Clark. She's not just a star. She's become the face of a new era for the WNBA. Her games are packed, her merch is flying off the shelves, and her name brings attention in ways the league hasn't seen before. While the WNBA is finally gaining mainstream traction, The union's leadership is openly undercutting the progress by promoting a smaller and proven alternative. Clark's presence highlights just how much the league has grown, especially in fan engagement and commercial potential. And that momentum is what makes Collier's criticism sting. At a moment when the league should be capitalizing on its popularity, her message to the world is that it's not enough, and that her league is the answer. But that creates a divide. For players who are all in on the WNBA's long-term success, Collier's actions feel like a betrayal. Her startup's failure wouldn't just hurt her, it could damage the careers of dozens of other athletes who are relying on the WNBA to keep expanding. The ripple effect of her undermining the league could stretch far beyond labor talks. Sponsors may hesitate. Investors might back away. Fans could lose confidence. And for Clark, who's carrying so much of the league's attention on her back, it creates a narrative that the league she's helping grow isn't being protected from within. That's a tough pill to swallow, especially when the players' union, meant to be a protective shield, is being used as a platform for competitors to plant seeds of. Clark hasn't directly addressed Collier's conflict, but the tension is obvious. When you're out on the court pulling record numbers and seeing arenas packed, it's hard to reconcile that with union leadership telling the media the league model is unsustainable. The message doesn't line up with what fans are seeing, and that disconnect only creates more confusion. And when confusion spreads, trust erodes. Clark's value is tied to a stable, growing league. Any disruption, whether it's a failed CBA negotiation, a strike, or even a PR nightmare like this, directly affect her marketability and income. So while she's scoring points, other people are working the sidelines, trying to flip the scoreboard entirely. You can see the stakes in every packed stadium and every sold-out jersey. The WNBA has momentum right now, and that momentum didn't come easy. It took years of player advocacy, organizational investment, and cultural shifts to get here. Undermining that, especially from within, isn't just self-serving, it's reckless. And while some argue that Collier's just offering more options for women's basketball, the truth is she's doing it in a way that compromises the very league she's supposed to uplift. Unrivaled's business model isn't some evolved next step, it's a high-risk startup dependent on hype and venture capital. It's not built to last, at least not without the same kind of long-term infrastructure the WNBA already has. Which is exactly why using the union as a launchpad for it is so dangerous. Collier is using her power as a union VP to highlight flaws in the WNBA, but doing so in service of a personal business agenda. It's not transparency, it's strategy. And it's working against the people she's been elected to represent. Union leadership has to be built on trust. If the players can't believe their VP is acting in their best interests, then who is she really speaking for? Because right now, it looks like she's speaking for investors, not teammates. And that's a problem that cuts deeper than any press release can fix. Unrivaled might be marketed as player first, but that doesn't mean it's league safe. The startup's financial instability isn't a secret. It's something that even its backers quietly acknowledge. When a company relies almost entirely on outside capital, it means there's a ticking clock on sustainability. And in sports, that clock is unforgiving. So if Collier is banking on Unrivaled taking over while the WNBA negotiates its next era, what happens if both fall apart? That's the scenario nobody wants to talk about, but it's entirely possible. And if it happens, it'll be because the league's own leadership helped push it there. There's also the question of precedent. If union leaders in sports can run competing ventures without consequence, what's to stop other leagues from collapsing under the weight of their own leadership's ambitions? This isn't just about basketball. It's about the structure of labor representation in pro sports. When leaders turn into competitors, players lose. And they're starting to notice. The skepticism around Collier's dual role is growing louder. Players are asking harder questions. Media is digging deeper. Fans are watching closely. The controversy is no longer just about one person. It's about what kind of league the WNBA is going to be. One that allows conflicts of interest to grow unchecked, or one that draws a hard line to protect its future. The partnership between Caitlin Clark and Breanna Stewart was supposed to be symbolic, a passing of the torch from established veteran to rising superstar. But now, with Stewart fully entangled and unrivaled and sitting on the union's negotiation committee, the symbolism feels hollow. It's not collaboration. It's conflicting agendas playing out in real time. And Clark is the collateral damage. It's hard to trust leadership when their financial success hinges on failure elsewhere. For Stewart, like Collier, the worse the WNBA looks, the more attractive unrivaled becomes. That puts pressure on every decision they make in these negotiations. Are they really advocating for better conditions, or just making the league look worse to boost their new brand? Players are talking, even if not all of them are doing it publicly. Behind closed doors, there's growing resentment toward Collier's approach. Not because players don't want more options, they do, but because those options are being built by someone whose current role demands loyalty to the WNBA first. That contradiction is where the betrayal cuts deepest. And it's not subtle. Collier has used media platforms to critique the WNBA's pay structure and limited season. But she does so while never disclosing that those criticisms directly benefit her alternative product. That's not advocacy. That's manipulation disguised as leadership. And the more she talks, the more the league bleeds. Unrivaled was pitched as a solution to the WNBA's problems. But it's not clear if it's a solution for the players or just for the founders. The business model isn't built to scale. There's no long-term TV deal. The venues are smaller. The revenue projections are more hope than strategy. It's a startup, not a system. Yet Collier's narrative positions Unrivaled as a superior model, using vague promises of flexibility and player control. But none of that matters if the league isn't profitable. A shiny new stage doesn't matter if no one is buying tickets. And with the current losses Unrivaled is facing, sustainability is more theory than reality. That contrast between what Unrivaled promises and what the WNBA is actually achieving couldn't be sharper. Caitlin Clark's debut season alone has boosted ratings, sold merchandise, and brought new fans to the game. The league is growing in front of our eyes, and yet the loudest voices inside are still trying to tear it down. It creates a depressing double narrative. On one side, fans see a league thriving. On the other, they hear from union leadership that it's not enough. And when those messages come from players like Collier and Stewart, people with influence and trust, it muddies the water. Who's telling the truth? Who's working for who? Breanna Stewart continues to present herself as a player advocate, but that image is harder to maintain when she's benefiting from the WNBA's potential collapse. She may not say it outright, but her actions send a clear message. If the league falters, Unrivaled wins. This isn't theoretical. Stewart is shaping the next CBA, and if those negotiations fall apart or end in a strike, it doesn't hurt Unrivaled. In fact, it creates a prime opportunity to pitch themselves as a stable alternative. That's the play. Leverage instability to make their new product look appealing. But at what cost to the sport they claim to love? The WNBA is no stranger to labor fights. But in most cases, union leadership and players were unified against management. Now, with union leaders doubling as entrepreneurs, the line is blurred. Collier's actions have created a situation where it's no longer clear which side she's on, or if there are even sides left at all. Her dual role has eroded solidarity. It's split the locker rooms. It's made younger players unsure whether they're being represented or recruited. And in a league where unity has always been a strength, this fracture could be the one that lingers the longest. It's easy to cheer for more leagues and better opportunities for women's sports. But growth doesn't mean burning everything down to rebuild in your image. And that's exactly what Collier seems to be doing. Instead of strengthening the WNBA, she's draining trust from it to serve another interest. And Unrivaled isn't built on organic fan growth or long-term player development. It's a shortcut, a workaround, one that only functions if people lose faith in the system they've built for years. But systems don't grow stronger through sabotage. They grow through investment and patience, two things that Collier's startup isn't. Caitlin Clark's silence on the issue is starting to speak volumes. She's positioned to be the face of the league, But that only works if there's a league to lead. Every interview, every game, every fan interaction adds to the brand of the WNBA. But behind the scenes, the foundations are shaking. Clark is expected to show up, perform, and grow the sport. But the people tasked with protecting that future are laying landmines under her. It's not just unfair. It's exhausting. She didn't sign up to carry the whole league, while internal politics pull it apart from the inside. But right now, that's exactly what's happening. There's a quiet frustration building. You can see it in the body language of players, the guarded responses in press conferences, the awkward silence when the topic of unrivaled comes up. This isn't just a business debate, it's emotional. It's personal, because for many players, the WNBA isn't just a job. It's the dream. And now, they're watching their leaders gamble it away. The emotional toll of that cannot be understated. How do you rally around a league when the people at the top are treating it like a stepping stone? For young players especially, that sense of betrayal runs deep. They came into this league hoping to build something, and now they're wondering if it's already being dismantled. Breanna Stewart and Napheesa Collier haven't broken any laws, but they've broken something else: trust. And once that's gone, it's hard to get back. No amount of PR spin or investor promises can fix the damage of a fractured player base. And unless something changes fast, this could be the tipping point that shifts the entire landscape of women's basketball. The WNBA will survive this moment, but how it survives depends on what players choose next. Will they rally behind the league or split off into a new, unstable venture built on conflict and contradiction? That's the real legacy Collier and Stewart are shaping. Not just for themselves, but for every woman who dreams of playing pro basketball. At the core of this mess is a question no one in the WNBA wants to ask out loud. Can you trust a union leader who's actively building a competitor? Because this isn't just about a side business or a passion project. This is about influence, who holds it, how it's used, and whether that influence is being sold to the highest bidder. Collier's position in the union gives her direct access to negotiation details, strategic discussions, and player sentiment. All of that insider knowledge can now be used to benefit Unrivaled. And that's the line that should never be crossed. Unrivaled's existence isn't the issue. Competition can be healthy. Innovation is welcome. But it's the way it's being built, on the bones of an active, struggling league, that makes it predatory. It's being promoted not as a complement to the WNBA, but as its solution. And the only way for a solution to thrive is if there's a big enough problem. So when the problem doesn't exist in reality, it has to be exaggerated. Collier and her allies criticize the league structure, downplay recent growth, and create narratives that serve their own product's positioning. But they're not speaking as outsiders. They're speaking as insiders, which makes the critique feel more valid and the damage far more severe. Meanwhile, the players who aren't in on the startup are left in limbo. What are they supposed to do? Speak out and risk being ostracized by union leadership? Stay silent and hope things blow over? Caitlin Clark is the symbol of that dilemma. She's elevated the league, drawn new eyes to the game, and shown what growth can look like when everyone is aligned. But even she can't outrun the consequences of division. Every headline about Unrivaled or every quote from Collier that undermines the league chips away at the foundation Clark is trying to build on. And no matter how many points she scores, she can't compete with chaos from within. Breanna Stewart's continued involvement in both negotiations and Unrivaled only adds fuel to the fire. It tells players that you can hold power in one hand and a personal business in the other, and no one will stop you. It sets a precedent that deeply compromises the purpose of union leadership. And it sends a chilling message to fans and sponsors, too. This league might not be stable. This leadership might not be united. This future might not be certain. That's how you lose trust. That's how you lose momentum. That's how you turn a rising league into a cautionary tale. Napheesa Collier may genuinely believe in what she's building. But the problem isn't her ambition. It's her timing, her tactics, and the role she refuses to step away from. You can't be the architect of the WNBA's future while simultaneously building an escape hatch. At this point, the only ethical path forward is clear: step down from the union. Let someone else lead the negotiations without ulterior motives. If Unrivaled is going to succeed, it should stand on its own, not lean on the sabotage of the league that gave it. Because here's the brutal truth. If Unrivaled thrives by sinking the WNBA, it doesn't win. It just inherits a fractured, disillusioned player base and a skeptical audience. That's not growth. It's collateral damage. And for the players who aren't board members or founders, there's no upside. There's no stock. There's no cut of the equity. They're just caught in the crossfire between ambition and integrity. Caitlin Clark deserves better. So do the rookies try to find their footing. So do the veterans who fought for better pay and longer seasons. The league finally has momentum, and it's being threatened not by outside forces, but by those at the helm. This isn't how change is supposed to happen. Change in sports should be collective, transparent, and grounded in shared values. What we're seeing instead is a power play disguised as progress. And if it continues, the WNBA may not survive. So now the spotlight is on the rest of the players. The ones who don't have a stake in Unrivaled. The ones who want the WNBA to grow, not burn. Will they stay silent and let this slide? Or will they speak up and demand accountability? Because this moment is bigger than a single league. It's about the future of women's sports. It's about what kind of leadership is acceptable. And it's about whether the people at the top are really there to serve or just to benefit. If you're watching this and you care about the integrity of sports, now is the time to pay attention. Drop your thoughts below, share this with someone who follows the league, and hit that subscribe if you're not ready to let another league go down in flames from the inside.